So what's the answer to diabetes? Most people believe it's found in the proper diet. But is it low-carb, high-fat or high-carb, low-fat? Check out this video. If you do much reading and research concerning methodologies for curing, reversing, or simply escaping the ravages of diabetes, you'll soon discover there seem to be two different approaches which directly oppose each other. They're nearly polar opposites. I'm talking about the whole food, plant-based, vegan, vegetarian approach and the low-carb, keto, paleo, don't worry a bit about the fat approach. People from both sides back their arguments with various studies and tests, and both freely give examples and case histories of individuals who've been either cured or dramatically helped by going on their particular diet of choice. If you read the books and the literature only from one side and watch all the YouTube videos promoting that particular side and that diet, you'll be convinced they must surely have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But when you start reading the articles and books by the proponents of the other perspective, questions will come into your mind. Perhaps the first group was wrong. I think maybe these guys have the truth on this whole thing. What are we to do? Some may say, well, I know the solution to this dilemma. I'll go with what the doctors and the researchers say about this. I won't trust my own feelings or prejudices. After all, I'm no doctor. I'll just find out what all the doctors are saying and I'll side with them. Well, there lies the problem. The doctors themselves don't agree. You can read impressive books with impressive stats, studies, and case histories by doctors who favor an all plant-based, low-fat, never let that nasty meat touch your lips diet. And then you can find equally impressive books with just as many stats and studies and personal testimonies by doctors who presumably studied much of the same things in medical school, but they promote low-carb, high-fat diets with eloquence and certainty. On YouTube, you find the same thing. When it comes to a cure or a reversal of diabetes, there are two camps with two nearly opposite views. They don't much like each other, since the other side undercuts everything they believe and practice and preach. In fact, sometimes they get downright nasty with each other. In the beginning of my struggle, I was about as close to being unbiased as one can be. But once I found that I could achieve normal blood sugar by carbohydrate restriction, I did develop some definite opinions about what diabetics and pre-diabetics need to do. And having kept diabetes away from my door for the last 17 years, I guess you could say I'm not so unbiased these days. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not an expert, except as pertains to my own blood sugar levels. But to paraphrase a man whom Jesus healed, one thing I know, though I was once at the very precipice of diabetes, now I'm doing fine. I know that carb restriction and reduction works. It has not only worked for me, but for countless others. If you type low-carb diet or keto diet in YouTube's search box, you'll find more videos than you could watch in 10 lifetimes. And they are increasing day by day, many of them posted by medical doctors. I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that by adopting a low-carb diet, most type 2 diabetics can get their blood sugar levels down fast. But what about the other side? Do the vegans claim the same thing? Well, almost. Of course, they cannot argue with the fact that when you significantly cut carbs, your blood sugar levels will decrease. Anybody with a blood sugar monitor knows that. But they argue that the low-carb approach is a band-aid, a crutch, which, although it might work temporarily, it will eventually lead to heart disease, sky-high cholesterol, poor nutrition, and an early death. They insist that their approach is the more natural approach. They say that men and women were made to eat plants, not animals, and that when we eat plants and cut our dietary fat to almost nothing, we'll eventually find our diabetes has disappeared. Many acknowledge that it may take some time and that temporarily you may have elevated blood sugar, but they'll tell you if you just wait it out. Sooner or later, all that plant-based nutrition and vitamins will do their healing work, and you'll see those numbers come down, down, down. There's no way that these few and simple thoughts I'm going to share with you in this video are going to settle the low-carb, high-fat versus the high-carb, low-fat controversy. But for those who claim they've been healed by a vegan, eat all the carbs you want diet, allow me to make the following observations. First, any diet can be helpful in combating diabetes if you end up losing weight as a result. Suppose I convince you to try my bananas and pickles diet. Now, I'm just using this as an illustration. Don't necessarily do this. But on this diet, you're going to eat bananas and pickles exclusively for the next 4 months. No meat, no veggies, just bananas and pickles morning, noon, and night. But I'm going to give you strict guidelines about how much you can eat. You're allowed 1 small banana and 1 pickle at each meal 3 times per day. Now, with such a small amount of food, you're bound to lose a lot of weight. Let's say on this diet that you drop 25 pounds in 4 months. A loss of 25 pounds is significant, and in many cases, such a loss will reduce your blood sugar levels from diabetic to non-diabetic. Many people are only diabetic when overweight, and if they can just get to a normal weight, they will cease being diabetic. And any way they can get there, whether through a banana and pickles diet, an all-fruit diet, an all-meat diet, an all-cornflakes diet, or any other diet that strictly limits calories and shreds weight, the results will be normal blood sugar, for some. But just because you dropped a lot of weight and ceased seeing diabetic numbers does not mean that your banana and pickle diet is the ideal solution for diabetes, or that you could keep to it the rest of your life. Typically, anyone who gets serious about a new diet, almost any new diet, will see a loss in weight and will likely experience better blood sugar levels. But don't try to come to me preaching that I must immediately start eating bananas and pickles just because it helped you. Now, even when blood sugar numbers are decent, there can be a problem, and we all need to see this. Let's say that you feel you're healed on a vegan, high-fruit, high-carb diet. One thing nobody can deny is that you're working your pancreas much harder than you would on a lower-carb diet. And what exactly is your pancreas doing? It is spewing out insulin. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong or abnormal about a pancreas releasing insulin. It was made for just such a purpose. And if it ever stops doing that, you're in big trouble. And this is type 1 diabetes, and the only way to stay alive in such a case is to inject insulin. So insulin in proper levels is natural and vitally necessary. But in cases where people combine insulin resistance with a high-carb diet, but still have a pancreas that functions well, their overtaxed pancreas is going to spit out 3 times, 5 times, or maybe 10 times as much insulin as would be normal and healthy. And when it comes to insulin, if a little is good, a lot is terrible. Too much insulin floating around in your bloodstream is incredibly dangerous to your health. This condition is called hyperinsulinemia, and all by itself, even without the high blood sugar, it can spell terrible physical maladies, especially heart disease. In addition, it makes it almost impossible to lose weight. Occasional high levels of insulin are no big deal, but when it happens constantly, as is the case where someone with insulin resistance stubbornly insists on eating carbs, and more carbs, there is a big problem. Doctors Michael and Mary Eads, in their book titled Protein Power, write this: "We know, as does every doctor, that the immediate effect of carbohydrate consumption is increased blood glucose, and then an increased insulin level. As we studied the medical literature, we found that researchers the world over were finding elevated insulin levels associated with obesity, heart disease, high blood pressure, and diabetes, the common diseases of modern man. These same researchers were beginning to believe that what caused the problem in the first place was the high-carbohydrate, low-fat diet." In the 1970s, prominent physicians, the United States government, and eventually nearly the whole world erroneously concluded that the epidemic increases of heart disease, diabetes, and obesity were the result of too much fat in our diet. The food pyramid was born, and everybody and their mamas were preaching to us that to get that fat out of our diet. The most popular boast on food packaging became the mantra, low fat. Millions dutifully cut back on meat, eggs, butter, and cheese, and gorged on chips, sugary cereal, and other low-fat, heart-healthy foods. What was the result? Heart disease, diabetes, and obesity went through the roof. We stuffed ourselves with carbs, our overworked pancreases wore out, and in the process we lived in a state of constant excess insulin floating around in our bloodstreams. We got sicker and fatter and sicker and fatter. Thinking we were doing ourselves a favor eating bagels and donuts and avoiding steaks and chicken, we were destroying ourselves as we submitted to the all-powerful, all-wise food pyramid, which commanded us, "Thou shalt load up on the carbs and stay away from the fat." Michael and Mary Eads write, "In the appropriate amount, insulin keeps the metabolic system humming along smoothly with everything in balance. In great excess, it becomes a rogue hormone, ranging throughout the body, wreaking metabolic havoc, and leaving a trail of chaos and disease in its wake." Wow, that statement is so powerful and so important that little school children should be taught it right along with the Gettysburg Address. It might save millions from diabetes. At the heart of it is this simple thought: too much insulin can be very, very bad news. What does this have to do with the plant-based approach? It means this: if eating your vegan diet, and especially if it's high carb, you're keeping your blood sugar levels near normal, you may very well be going through every day with elevated insulin, and that will eventually hurt you big time. Is it possible to be a vegan or a vegetarian and not provoke excessive insulin response? Yeah, it really is, but it's more difficult than it would be for a simple low-carber who eats meat, eggs, and dairy products. You can eat substitute breads made of almond and coconut flour. You can eat lots of salads, in fact, mountains of salads. You can have lots of tofu and plenty of nuts and seeds. It can be done, but I don't prefer to do it. Eating meat is both natural, pleasurable, and healthy for us. The Inuit people and Eskimo people whose diet is nearly 100% meat, and the Maasai tribe in East Africa, who eat almost all meat and no carbs, have both thrived on high meat diets for centuries and have virtually no diabetes and no heart disease. It's a good thing some well-meaning American didn't try to go to these people and teach them about the food pyramid. The problem with eliminating meat is you will have to replace it. We're going to find a way to get filled, and if we have no steak or chicken or fish to help us fill up at dinner, we'll find other things to eat. When the American government and the health experts began to condemn fat in our diets and suggest that meat was bad, 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 Americans tried to be good little boys and girls and cut down on the meat. Instead, they gravitated to breads, pastas, cereal, and even donuts and sweet rolls. Not only did this not eliminate heart disease, we saw a great spike in heart problems, obesity, and diabetes. We've jumped out of the pan into the proverbial high-carb fire. I hope you found that helpful. I plan to post another video soon where I take a closer look at the vegan diet promoted by Dr. Joel Fuhrman, and amazingly, I'll demonstrate that he and Dr. Richard Bernstein have more in common than you might imagine. If you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button. That way YouTube will rank it higher in their search engine and more people will be able to see it. And consider subscribing to this channel and then clicking on the little bell icon so that you'll be notified every time we post a new video. That's it for now. God bless, and see you again soon.